Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ron's Reviews. I'm Brian Berenshausen, and with me again today is Ron McFarland. Hi, Ron.
Hello, Brian. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, very good.
Glad to hear it. Today we are continuing our discussion of sustainable economic development. And in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about the issue of global governance and open organizations. So, Ron, why this topic? I mean, this is a big one.
Right. Yeah, this is a huge topic. And also, governance and how to organize really deals with multitude of organizations. It's not one company. It's not one country.
Right.
It's not one individual. It's not one team. So we've got to think in a global, open organization, let's say, mindset. And that's where it started. Many of our global issues, and of course, my career has been I've been in the international sales area. So automatically, by sales itself, you're automatically talking to a customer outside of your organization. So you've got to bring in other organizations, other people within your particular company or its products or its technology or its services, and you've got to work collaboratively. So that's where I started. And of course, it's been talking for some time now about how the environment is really suffering with population growth and a lot of the issues we have globally. And we've got to address these issues globally simply because no one country can do it by itself. So that's where the first topic came.
Great. And so why don't you take us through the book you've been reading to frame this discussion?
Right.
For folks that are watching at home, this is the third installment of a three-part review. Right. And so we encourage you to check out the other parts as well. But Ron, why don't you review for us quickly, in case this is someone's first episode, the book we've been talking about.
Right. Okay. Before I do that, I just want to stay on this slide for just 1 minute. Bear in mind, in the first article, all I was addressing is environmental issues, if you remember. And how can organizations and open organizations come together to address those problems?
That's right. Yep.
And then in the second article, I addressed human suffering. How are people, let's say, living around the world? And how is environmental issues impacting on their life in terms of food, in terms of water, in terms of health, and those kinds of. So I address those two, and I'm trying to bring those together and say, here are our problems. So in the first two articles, all I was talking about really in terms of organization principles, I'm talking about transparency. Get those problems exposed as detailed and as, let's say, vivid and, let's say, how do I say it? Image-wise,
urgently and as clearly, right? Yeah,
right, as possible. So I was looking at that, and I came across this book, and this is the book where I got all the material from. It's called "The Age of Sustainable Development" by Jeffrey Sachs, and it's his research. And this book is a little bit old, and I can't remember. I think it was 2015, I think he wrote it, 15 or 16, something like that.
Okay.
But anyway, it's equally valid today. It's equally valid today, and it covers exactly the problems that I was thinking about. Now, looking at this circle, now this is recent. It's from a completely different source. And I think I alluded to it briefly in our last presentation, Brian. I've been talking about environmental challenges.
That's right. You've been writing about this before.
I've been writing about that. And look at the outer circle of this, what I'm showing here. Those are the exact same challenges that I'm talking about.
They are. Yep.
Climate change, ocean acidification, all of the problems that I was talking about, there it is on the outer of this circle. In the inner part of this circle is the human suffering that I was talking about. And I just found this on what do you call it? Google, what is it? Google Images.
Right.
Here's this images of exactly what I'm talking about.
Very accessible. Yeah, it's top of mind. Sure.
in a visual form. And so I look at where the heck did that come from? And this is a researcher, actually it's a university professor, and she wrote a book called The Donut Economics, 7 Ways to Think About the 21st Century Economist. So we are looking at it from an organizational point of view. She's looking at from an economics point of view.
I see.
And she's saying economic studies today is outdated. You've got to change the way people think about economics. And economists are absolutely, actually, they're too powerful in terms of global concerns. Everyone is concerned about the global economic issues, but they do not have let's say, the attention of economic global issues or human suffering global issues. And that's why she says the economic, let's say, economics today is outdated. And you can look at, I'm referencing here, you can read her book, and I'm right in the middle of reading her book right now, actually. And also there's 2 YouTube, I'm referencing here, there's 2 YouTube presentations that you or whoever's viewing this video can see. But they're very, very fascinating. Exactly the issue that I was concerned about, she was concerned about. And we're doing this independently. I don't know who she is. It's fascinating. It's really, really fascinating. And we look at what she calls overshoot. I'm calling environmental challenges. In other words, the economic activities in the world are putting stress on our environmental, let's say, situation. And so she uses different terms. I'm thinking of it from here again, a perspective of building an organization that attacks environmental issues. She's looking at it from a global economic perspective. And the opposite, say, she calls it a shortfall. She calls it a shortfall where it's really not servicing human beings. And I'm calling this human suffering. And actually, I just read a paper in her book, The Inner Circle, she is calling human deprivification. And the outer circle is environmental deprivification. She's using actually better words than me.
Interesting.
But so you see how
we're validation. Yep.
Pardon me?
It's good validation, you know? That's
right.
Yeah. Right.
So that's what I made. I think we're on track here, but what we've got to do, and I don't even think she's addressed it, we've got to get organizations to address these issues. And that's where organization principles come into play. And also down below, she uses the term regenerative. Here again, this is kind of like your life cycle of lifestyle or life, and here again vegetables and such, how they regenerate itself. I'm using the term sustainable, which of course is Jeffrey Sachs's term. And she uses the term distributive economy, and I'm thinking about human suffering. She's thinking about it from the perspective of not only are some people suffering, but others have too much wealth. So this gets into income distribution and all those kind of things.
I see.
What I want to address really is the human suffering or human impact issue, and how can we set up organizations and teams and communities to attack those particular problems. So you see how this is all kind of playing together?
Yep. It's a nice overlap. Great call out. Yep.
Okay, now the next thing I want to do is, all right, what does this have to do with our open organization principles? How can we utilize open organization principles to address these major global problems? And as I said from the beginning from this, I think we ought to start with transparency to get the problem as visual and as transparent and as obvious as possible within the community. And I give an example here of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. That brings countries around the world together, and they have to commit what they want to do in terms of climate change. And they have to make it public. This is what I want to do. These are my goals by country. So they're announcing it. They're making it as transparent as possible. They bring it in, and this is the Paris climate change agreement. But also behind the scenes, the United Nations has its sustainable development goals, right? So they've got their goals. Here again, that's global goals, and then global targets and global indicators that are following those targets to make sure that the targets are in place. So we can bring all these together, and then from that point, we can start our communities. So a given country, he goes to Paris, he agrees on what he wants to do, he goes back to his particular country, and within his country, he talks about within its region, what can we do to achieve our goals? Locally, neighborhoods, villages, schools, it could be anything. It could be religious organizations. Any organization coming together can start building communities to attack the particular problems that they want to address. And from community, then when you have a group of people together, then you can start collaborating. All right, how are we going to attack these problems? What action plans are we going to put in place to work on? And who's going to do what assignment and what tasks are going to be distributed and such. So you can start with collaboration, or you can collaborate on it. And from collaboration, we've got, no matter what happens in any community or any organization for that matter, or team, you always run into a case where we have some weak links. We really have to go out and get more talent to solve our problems. And it may be outside of our country. We might have to go to the United Nations. We might have to go to some philanthropical organization. We might have to go to a company that has a certain amount of expertise or something, or technology or something. We've got to have the, let's say, humility to say, we don't know how to do this. We need help. And on the opposite side, if someone outside of the country looks inside the country and says, you know, that country really needs some help in this, and we have the talent. Why don't we approach them? So those communities have to be accessible, accepting of outside support. So that's what I mean by inclusivity here, of bringing parties together. Now, what do you think about that,
I
Brian?
mean, it makes sense, because I think you are talking about the sort of two dimensions of inclusivity. Like you're talking about the desire for the group to want to go out and find those, find folks and partners who are going to fill those gaps on the team. But you're also talking about the team making an environment creating a culture, a team culture that makes people want to join it and makes them feel like they can add something to the collaboration, right? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, and also, in a lot of organizations, they have diversity and inclusivity within their organization together. This is the diversity inclusivity team, and they're trying to get their let's say, their organization more diverse. Well, we can talk about diversity too. Within a given country, there may be a different religion. There may be a different part of the country that speaks a completely different language. And that's where diversity is also important within this.
Right, right.
I don't really talk about it because I really want to work on solving the problem instead of having, not enough women and too many, old people and that kind of thing. I am not really concerned about diversity as much as I am getting the talent in the room to solve the problem.
I see. Okay.
But anyway, that's inclusivity, and it fits into here again, part of our governance issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then finally, adaptability. As we move along in our project, there's always something, maybe our goals are not really aligned with what we can achieve. Or maybe, let's say we have the right goals, but we are approaching it really the wrong way. We've got to bring in different technology than we have. So this is where adaptability comes into play. We've got to have that flexibility and that, here again, that ability to say, listen, we're moving in the wrong direction, or we have to, let's say tweak our direction a little bit, or tweak our goals a little bit, or tweak the technology that we are, let's say, using too much of and not enough something else. We've got to do something. And then after that, then we can feel like we're really moving in the right direction. So anyway, from that point, I've gone full circle, and let's assume we've gone through milestones. We've achieved pretty much everything that is achievable. And we want to say, well, we cannot, it'll be a law of diminishing returns if we keep pounding away on this. We think we've achieved pretty much as we can, so we can start moving to another community, another purpose, and another project. Or opposite, he said, listen, we are not really doing well here. We've got to move back, and we've got to get our teams together and start collaborating all over again and keep this moving forward. We've got to collaborate. Maybe it's transparency. Maybe it's inclusive. We've got to bring in more talent. Whatever it may be, what you want to do is you want to stay within this loop. Stay in there until you feel like, in my heart, I've achieved everything that I wanted to achieve, or we as a community achieved everything we want to achieve. The problem is there will be external forces that are narrow, that are special interests, that'll try to break down our particular project. And we have to, let's say, resist those outside forces to make sure that we achieve what we want to achieve. And so that's why I made this full loop around here. Yeah, so what do you think really about that whole community, let's say, banging one principle off of another and such?
Well, it makes a lot of sense. You know, we often talk about open organization principles, but you visualize them in a really, and systematize them in a really useful way. And it's also, I think, important to note that really, I mean, you started with transparency because you started with the issue of exposing problems, making them transparent, bringing them to light. But you could, I could see scenarios where you could start with any principle and enter into the loop in any, because they're all chain linked together in a way, right? So it's helpful to be able to understand, maybe a particular group can't start with transparency, but can start somewhere else. And they need to get a group together before they can make the issues transparent. So they start with collaboration or something. Then that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Okay. Very good. Okay. So this is what I want to do in terms of here, the governance of sustainable global economic development, including environmental issues and human suffering issues. So let's take a look at an example. Now, this is right out of the United Nations website. This is their data, and there's the link. You can look at these goals, and I just randomly picked Sustainable Development Goal number 13, which is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. So I just selected one. Now, bear in mind, there's 17 of them, and I just selected one to give you an example of how this the open organizations principles can play. From that particular goal, there's a target. The target is to strengthen resilience and adaptive capability to climate-related hazards and natural disasters in all countries. So all countries, obviously, that breaks down to each individual country has to be more adaptive. Now, taking that target, let's bring it down into an indicator. The indicator is the number of deaths, missing persons, and persons affected by a disaster per 100,000 people. So here you see how I'm getting into more detailed numbers here.
Right.
Now I can start to measure things.
Right.
Now we've got into something, it's measurable, and also we can say we've achieved it. It's kind of like going to a baseball game, but no one knows how to keep score.
Right.
They just run around in circles. So you've got to have some kind of scoring mechanism there. And that's what we're trying to do.
Sure.
Right. And another one just underneath that is the number of countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies. Now I looked at this, and right out of the website, they announced there, right in their data, that 85 countries right now have disaster risk reduction strategies. 85 only out of 196 at the Paris Accord. 196 countries attended. Only 85 really came together and developed a strategy. Excuse me here. Okay, only 85. So what's happening with the other countries? I would like to ask that question, not to be nasty to those countries, but to say, how can we be helpful?
Sure.
And getting back to my open organization principle of inclusivity, we should be approaching them because they're not approaching us. Here again, they are not going external and saying, we've got a problem here, we should do something.
Right.
So we should, from the outside, because it's going to be a global problem. If they fail, then we fail too. And so that's why I say I want to do this in a way that it may be funding. Oh, we don't have any money. I said, all right, let's work on a funding project for you. If you can make transparency what you want to do, funding will be available. Usually funding is not a big problem. If you can present your strategy strong enough, usually the funding will be there. And obviously they're going to set up feasibility studies and how to go through the activities to overcome the problem you're looking at. Okay, the last one right here, just one more indicator, and this is getting right back to the exact same thing. But here again, I've got my goals, I've got my strategies, but nobody is implementing them. No one is really doing anything. And that is a big problem. People love to get in their meetings and have wonderful strategies, but no one wants to get down in the dirt and really do the hard work to achieve whatever you want to do in your strategy. And that's where, here again, real implementation has to be addressed. And that's where you get into milestones and goals and tasks and responsibilities and all that kind of things. Okay, do you see how this is all flowing?
Yep, I do. This is helpful. Thanks.
Okay, and everything that I've said right now, this is right out of the website. This is really nothing new. I'm just presenting what they have. Now take a look at the next slide. I've got the exact same thing, but I want to target it on open organization principles and how they work in this. So on the left-hand side, there are my indicators. Okay, the next thing, and now this is us. This is not in their website. This is us.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
13.1.1.1. Got it.
It's 13.1.1 is first, if I want to count the number of deaths, if there's let's say a typhoon or an earthquake or a flooding or a drought or whatever it may be, hunger, whatever it may be, whatever the issue is. Whatever that issue is, and we got to count how many people died from that in comparison to 100,000 people in the population. The first thing we've got to do is identify the people in the country. Now here in Japan, actually, Japan is a little bit even more strict than the United States. As soon as someone is born, someone is married, you gotta go down to your local office and you record. So I have a family, I had to make a family tree for my family in Japan because obviously I'm not Japanese. I marry my wife leaves her family and comes into my foreign family, but I'm not registered. So I had to create a family tree in Japan. Under the family tree, obviously, are my children and my grandchildren within the tree. Everyone knows where I'm at. So armed in every country should have something, but some developing countries do not. You really don't know the population that you have to work with. So first, identify the people you have in the country. Underneath that, you're going to say, all right, with each community, family, children, schools, what are you going to do as an action plan to let's say overcome, let's say you have typhoons. All right, the typhoons come every year. How are you going to prepare for next year's typhoon? Where are you going to go? Are you going to, for example, go to a high ground? Are you going to go to a, let's say, a relative's house? What is your plan? And everyone's got to report what their plan is. So here again, this gets back into identification and setting up an action plan. And here again, this is, you see how this flows from one community to another. And here again, Brian, I'm just making this up now. You can have better goals than me, what I'm saying, but I just want to break these down into achievable, doable goals.
Right.
From that, communities can be created within the community, when then we can start working on all of our principles. And as I say, it's very, very complicated. So you cannot say, I'm going to do 25 of them.
Right.
If you're going to say you're going to do 25, you're going to do 0.
0 of them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So start with 1. And then if you're somewhat confident, then go to 2, or then go to 3. Because as I say, you've got these 3 issues going. You've got economic issues. People want to live and work and, let's say, get an income. You've got economic issues. Next is you've got an environment issues. The environment really doesn't care about economics. It just cares about, here again, staying alive. You know, here again, this is environmentally staying alive. Right. And the third one is, here again, it's the human suffering issues, of which some people are really out of the, let's say, the economic community. They are below the surface of the economic. And actually, that book that I was telling you about, that donut economics, she was talking about that, and I remember that very much. In terms of economics, you think about businesses. Businesses really don't care about poor people because they can't buy whatever product you have to sell, unfortunately. So they don't care about them, unless, here again, you have some kind of external force. And also, the businesses really don't care about the environment that much. I know when I was in sales training, I would ask, I've had, I don't know, hundreds of sales seminars. And I would ask the salespeople, here again, these are truck salespeople, I would ask them, what are the main reasons why people buy a truck? Never, ever will they say it's because I want to have a, let's say, a cleaner engine or environmentally friendly truck. That's really right down on the bottom, simply because their customers don't think about that when they're buying a truck. They're not thinking about fuel economy. They're not thinking about emissions. They're thinking about getting their payload from one place to another. Sometimes they're thinking about comfort. Sometimes they're thinking about fuel economy for their own cost. But it never really comes up. And so that's why I say we've got to do these in a different kind of a way. And hopefully, as time goes on, information technology is going to play a major role in bringing these communities together. Even if they're virtual, Brian, even if they're virtual communities. So this is what I was trying to do in this presentation.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It's a great example.
Okay. Okay, good. So anyway, this is basically what I wanted to do in terms of governance. I just gave one example. There could be literally thousands of those purposes and communities and such in a wide range of issues. But anyway, that's what I wanted to achieve, really, over all 3 of the articles.
Well, thank you for that, Ron. Really helpful. And, you know, just to reiterate what you just said, you know, for folks watching the series, if you're interested in learning more or reading more about Jeffrey Sachs's book or Ron's review of it, check out the article that accompanies this video on opensource.com, which will be published in June. And there you can read the entire series and watch the entire series of videos as well. Please drop us a line or join us at theopenorganization.community if you're interested in talking with Ron or any of our Open Organization ambassadors. Ron, thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate it.
Very good, Brian. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
I did. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. All right. Bye.
Right. Bye-bye.